This is Audible.
A Brief Introduction by Edwin Robert Bevan. Arrian, known to the Romans as Flavius Arrianus, of Nicomedia in Bithynia, Greek historian and philosopher, was born about AD 96 and lived during the reigns of Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius. In recognition of his abilities, he received the citizenship of both Athens and Rome. He was greatly esteemed by Hadrian, who appointed him governor of Cappadocia from 131 to 137, in which capacity he distinguished himself in a campaign against the Alani. This is the only instance before the 3rd century in which a first-rate Roman military command was given to a Greek. Arian spent a considerable portion of his time at Athens, where he was archon in 147 and 148. With his retirement or recall from Cappadocia, his official career came to an end. In his declining years he retired to his native place, where he devoted himself to literary work. He died about 180. His biography, by Dio Cassius, is lost. When young, Arian was the pupil and friend of Epictetus, who had probably withdrawn to Nicopolis when Domitian expelled all philosophers from Rome. He took verbatim notes of his teacher's lectures, which he subsequently published under the title of The Dissertations, in 8 books, of which the first 4 are extant and constitute the chief authority for Stoic ethics, and the Enchiridion of Epictetus, a handbook of moral philosophy, for many years a favorite instruction book with both Christians and pagans. It was adapted for Christian use by St. Nilus of Constantinople in the 5th century, and Simplicius, around 550, wrote a commentary on it which we still possess. The most important of Arian's original works is his Anabasis of Alexander, in 7 books, containing the history of Alexander the Great from his accession to his death. Arian's chief authorities were, as he tells us, Aristobulus of Cassandreia and Ptolemy, son of Lagus, afterwards king of Egypt, who both accompanied Alexander on his campaigns. In spite of a too indulgent view of his hero's defects and some over-credulity, Arian's is the most complete and trustworthy account of Alexander that we possess. The one glaring instance of Arian's misplaced credulity is his quotation of a letter purporting to be from Alexander to Cleomenes, satrap of Egypt. It says that in return for the proper care of Hephaestion's shrines, Cleomenes will be granted immunity for all offences past or future. In the form here given, however, this letter is certainly a forgery, as there is a reference to the Pharos lighthouse, which was built 80 years after Alexander had died, and he could not possibly have known anything of it. Arian's style is simple, lucid, and manly. He was called Xenophon the Younger, from his imitation of that writer, and he even speaks of himself as Xenophon. Alexander III, known as the Great, was born in 356 BC and died in 323 BC. He was the king of Macedon, the son of Philip II of Macedon and Olympias, an Epirot princess. His father was preeminent for practical genius, his mother a woman of half-wild blood, weird, visionary, and terrible. And Alexander himself is singular among men of action for the imaginative splendors which guided him, and among romantic dreamers for the things he achieved. He was born in 356 BC, probably about October. The court at which he grew up was the focus of great activities, for Philip, by war and diplomacy, was raising Macedon to the headship of the Greek states, and the heir was charged with great ideas. To unite the Greek race in a war against the Persian Empire was set up as the ultimate mark for ambition, the theme of idealists. The great literary achievements of the Greeks in the 5th century lay already far enough behind to have become invested with a classical dignity. The meaning of Hellenic civilization had been made concrete in a way which might sustain enthusiasm for a body of ideal values, authoritative by tradition. And upon Alexander, in his 14th year, this sum of tradition was brought to bear through the person of the man who, beyond all others, had gathered it up into an organic whole. In 343 or 342, Aristotle came to Pella at Philip's bidding to direct the education of his son. We do not know what faculty the master thinker may have had for captivating this ardent spirit. At any rate, Alexander carried with him through life a passion for Homer, however he may have been disposed to greyer philosophic theory. But his education was not all from books. The coming and going of envoys from many states, Greek and Oriental, taught him something of the actual conditions of the world. He was early schooled in war. At the age of 16 he commanded in Macedonia during Philip's absence, and quelled a rising of the hill tribes on the northern border. In the following year, 338, he headed the charge which broke the sacred band at Chaeronea. Then came family dissensions, such as usually vex the polygamous courts of the East. In 337, Philip repudiated Olympias for another wife, Cleopatra. Alexander went with his mother to her home in Epirus, and though he soon returned and an outward reconciliation between father and son was contrived, their hearts were estranged. The king's new wife was with child. Her kinsmen were in the ascendant. The succession of Alexander was imperilled. Some negotiations which Pixodarus, the satrap of Caria, opened with the Macedonian court with a view to effecting a marriage alliance between his house and Philip's, brought Alexander into fresh broils. In 336 BC, while celebrating at Aigi the marriage of his daughter to Alexander I of Epirus, Philip was suddenly assassinated in the presence of a great concourse from all the Greek world. It is certain that the hand of the assassin was prompted by someone in the background. Suspicion could not fail to fall upon Alexander, among others, but guilt of that sort would hardly be consistent with his character as it appears in those early days. Alexander was not the only claimant to the vacant throne, but recognized by the army, he soon swept all rivals from his path. The newly born son of Philip by Cleopatra and Alexander's cousin Amyntas were put to death, and Alexander took up the interrupted work of his father. That work was on the point of opening its most brilliant chapter by an invasion of the great king's dominions. The army was concentrated, and certain forces had already been sent on to occupy the opposite shore of the Hellespont. The assassination of Philip delayed the blow, for it immediately made the base, Macedonia, insecure, and in such an enterprise, plunging into the vast territories of the Persian Empire, a secure base was everything. Philip's removal had made all the hill peoples of the north and west raise their heads and set the Greek states free from their fears. It is at this point that our story begins.